What's the good word, y'all? So we've had a lot of news start coming out since Zach Wilson's most recent injury. So recapping all the things as well as some joint practices that are coming up with the Atlanta Falcons and some things we need to keep an eye on. Starting with Zach Wilson, we know that essentially the injury designation is a bone bruise in addition to an MCL tear. Apparently, it's not a full meniscus tear. They just need to do some trimming, at least according to early reports. Robert Saleh and them are still being very cautious with it, though. As they mentioned, they're not going to slap any timetables on the recovery, although we've heard 2 to 4 weeks recently until they can actually complete the surgery, which is expected to occur Tuesday, I believe. So we'll see what happens there. Interestingly enough, the same person that is going to be performing the work for Zach Wilson is the same person that Mekhi Becton will also be consulting with regarding his kneecap issue and that avulsion. I forget what it was, an avulsion tear maybe, but essentially the chipped piece that's in his knee for his surgically repaired leg. So, I mean, that's as far as we know right now. It is what it is. Joe Flacco has been picking up the remains of the QB1 position for us, with everybody else bumping up. So Mike White now is the backup officially, and Chris Streveler as our third string. And it sounds like it's been going really, really well. Apparently, Joe Flacco had a perfect string of third down completions when they were completing their work. He was like 18 of 20, I think I've seen during his first practice as QB1. Connor McGovern had already spoken out on his behalf in regards to Joe Flacco's Super Bowl pedigree, numerous playoff games, and the experience that comes with him just being a veteran who's seen and done quite a bit of work. And it's obviously a great situation for us. Zach Wilson, I was really hoping to see him in these joint practices against the Falcons and the Giants. It's not going to end up happening, but there is good news that comes out of this. So with Joe Flacco already performing extremely well, we knew we had a lot of weapons and stuff. This season was going to be a lot more about that continued growth for a lot of these young weapons. Elijah Moore, seeing if Corey Davis can bounce back, bringing along Garrett Wilson. But we're in this position now where we don't necessarily have to see multiple young players work out the kinks with each other. Joe Flacco can bring his savvy veteran experience in and maybe help boost up where a lot of these rookies can get to quicker than what Zach Wilson would have been able. And there's a few parallels. Joe Flacco still has a very big arm, much like Zach Wilson did. He's not really mobile, so that part gets taken out of our playbook necessarily, but it's not a huge proponent of what we needed to do. We can alter things very slightly. The playbook was changed to do a few more things like rolling out and some bootlegs and things like that to complement Zach Wilson. But in terms of being able to sit in the pocket and throw some dimes and know where he's going and how to operate this offense, it can definitely get done at a high level. So with a much improved defense, Joe Flacco honestly can be a huge plus for us. My only concern is, pending this 2 to 4 week time frame, if that stands true, if it's anything longer, let's say we play the first 2, 3, maybe even the first 4 games of the season, if we come out of there 2-2 or 3-1, something crazy like that, or even technically maybe 1-3, but something where we're not in a huge hole like 0-4, I would probably say 2-2 is the mark. Do we give Joe Flacco the opportunity to still go out there and maybe try to salvage an entire season for us and wait till he does have a string of bad games or just a very bad performance before we try to put Zach Wilson in there? Obviously, he's the future, but if things take an unexpected turn and we really do end up 2-2, 3-1, I can see there being a huge situation where the fan base would be upset to see Joe Flacco removed and Zach Wilson, inserted back into the lineup. So it might be useful for him to carry a clipboard again. For all of his physical traits, we knew that he was very raw when it came to the mental part of the game. Obviously, he's a very studious person, but he just didn't get a chance to see a lot of game experience during his time at BYU, between all of the injuries, having to fight for a starting spot. And so we've seen what happened when he had his breakout junior year and was able to piece all the things together. But still, that definitely took some time, much like it did for a Quinnen Williams, if you want to flip to another player that kind of had a slow come on as well. So it might not be the worst thing for him to hold the clipboard. We'll kind of see how that plays out. But I do have early aspirations to see this team take a jump forward with Joe Flacco behind the helms. Garrett Wilson potentially can do a lot more damage now, being able to lean on that experience that Joe Flacco has, and the multitude of players that Joe Flacco has helped bring up during his tenure with the Ravens. The other question, though, is when we think of the joint practices, which will be coming up on the 19th and the 20th, there's a few headlines. So for one, we know Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder. They're both two dual threat quarterbacks. Desmond Ridder just led a game-winning drive for his Falcons. Marcus Mariota has apparently had kind of a stronghold grip on the starting position, although Desmond Ridder, if he keeps up some of these performances, can make a little headway there. But still, it seems like Marcus Mariota is comfortably there. The dual threat situation will be a good test of our defense for those 2 days leading up into the game. We've seen, like we did with the Eagles, they put on a clinic. Jalen Hurts pretty much had a perfect game. Quincy Williams, of course, didn't really help it. Maybe some things could have changed. But it felt and seemed like the same old defense for the most part. If you deep dive into it, you definitely can see some of the huge improvements that were made. But as a whole, the product didn't look great, even with some of the starters missing. So this will give us practice against another opponent, similar abilities, or at least similar ways to attack our defense, and we will see if we can get some tangible improvements. Secondly, I really wanted to see Drake London. Apparently he had a knee injury, so he won't be participating in the joint practices and probably won't see the game either. I wanted to see him matched up against Sauce Gardner and Bryce Hall to get a pretty good idea of how close the competition may be, considering, and it's crazy, that's probably one of the better talents in that wide receiver room. Outside of that, the Atlanta Falcons don't really have anybody that's scary in their wide receiver room. Kyle Pitts immediately becomes the biggest danger that we have defensively to keep an eye out for, and between screens and not having a good history of being able to cover tight ends, it could be a bit worrisome. One of the other headlines that we talked about a while back as well is that the Atlanta Falcons is kind of famed this year for having one of the tallest receiving groups as wide receivers and tight ends in the league. I think that average height is something like 6'3" or 6'4". Their smallest player is 5'8", something like that, but for the most part, everybody's generally like 6'3", 6'4". All their tight ends are at least like 6'6", if I remember correctly, with Kyle Pitts leading the helm. So that'll be an interesting situation because we now have DJ Reed manning one of the other boundary cornerback spots. We also have Michael Carter, the second in the slot room, in the slot position. He did not have the best game in the preseason, so maybe it was just a slow start and he'll pick up some jitters, maybe. We'll see. But purely based off physical traits, it's going to be a bit of a tough matchup, so I'm very interested to see how we adapt to that problem, because it's definitely going to be a continuous situation for us. Maybe this means that we end up playing more zone schemes rather than manning up quite a bit outside of Sauce Gardner, and maybe we see Sauce Gardner do what he was able to do in Cincinnati, where they kind of had him follow around the best player, which would be a way to maybe potentially get Bryce Hall on the field a little bit more, who's one of the taller cornerbacks that we have as well. And then for us, we mentioned Joe Flacco, specifically against this Atlanta Falcons defense. They don't have anybody that's really scary either. Deion Jones is still not playing. He's on the PUP list. And there's nobody else that's really a threat. I mean, Lorenzo Carter is probably the most decorated, pass rusher that they have. They're not particularly excelling in rush defense either. So we have some opportunities here to take advantage of these days, again, leading into the game. And we should hear a lot more good than bad coming out of these practices. And the other part for us really is just going to be seeing if our rookies continue to improve. I'm curious who Ahmad Sauce Gardner gets matched up with. Jermaine Johnson had a pretty solid game. Michael Clemens was looking unstoppable. So, against this offensive line, we should be able to wreak havoc once again. But I would say that's probably all the storylines off the top of my head I can recall. Just in terms of things to keep an eye on. Let me know what you guys are most interested, though, in seeing with this Atlanta Falcons New York Jets joint practice and then the matchup that'll come in preseason. And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.